welcome everybody. This is a joint event hosted by ODI, the Humanitarian Practice Network, and ActionAid. We're launching today Network Paper 68, which is called Safety with Dignity, Integrating Community-Based Protection into Humanitarian Programming. This paper was written by two people, Kate Berry and Cheryl Reddy, both of whom most recently worked for ActionAid. Kate is currently working with the Australian Red Cross, setting up a community-based protection program for Indigenous Australians. And Cheryl Reddy has been working in Gaza, but now has just finished an assignment in Haiti, and I think has left ActionAid. We've got with us today, because neither Kate or Cheryl could be with us, we've got Amany Abouzeid, who is ActionAid's Human Security Policy Coordinator. She's going to be giving a presentation on the paper and the manual on which it's based, which is Safety with Dignity, a field manual for integrating community-based protection across humanitarian programs. Brendan Ross is ActionAid's Middle East representative, and he's going to be talking about the experience of using these approaches in Gaza. And I wanted to also, before I talk a bit more about our presenters, I wanted to welcome those who are watching us online, because we're doing the online streaming here. And this enables us to reach a much wider audience. I think we've got around 50 people signed up to watch online, so that's a good audience. So welcome to you as well. I just wanted to say a bit more about our presenters. So Amany has been with ActionAid for almost a year, and she is the Human Security Policy Coordinator. Previously, she was the director of an international organization called Rainbow, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, which is focused on issues such as female genital mutilation. And Amany's also lectured at SOAS on gender and development, and she set up the gender unit for UNDP in Cairo. And she's done many other things, but that's as far back as we're going today. And Brendan, who managed to make it here from Gaza despite the volcanic ash cloud, is ActionAid's Middle East representative. And he's been with ActionAid for about 1 year now, but has 10 years previous experience with Oxfam, working in various positions and locations, including Darfur and Aceh, working on conflict issues, and Zimbabwe, amongst others. And he's also worked for 3 years as the Humanitarian Advocacy and Protection Coordinator for Oxfam Australia. So we've got some knowledgeable and experienced people here today who are going to now present the paper. And I think we've also got a short film which we're going to show in between the two presentations. After the presentations have been given, then we're going to open the floor for discussion. And for those of you who are here today, we've also got some sandwiches and drinks after the discussion where you can carry on networking. We've got copies of these publications. This is the network paper and ActionAid's manual on which it's based. These are sitting outside on the table, along with other ODI, Humanitarian Policy Group, and HPN publications that may be of interest to you. Okay, I won't say any more. Amany?
Thank you very much, Wendy. Hi, everyone. This is Amany Abouzeid. As Wendy said, I'm the Human Security Policy Coordinator. Thank you for having me as the speaker, and thank you very much, HPN, for availing this space and this expertise and forum for us to discuss issues around protection. I feel a bit of a fraud. I am not a protection specialist, but I'm here standing for my colleagues, Kate Berry and Cheryl Reddy, who were supposed to be with us with video linking, but anyway, we just could not set this up on our end. So I shall be presenting the paper. And of course, in 10-15 minutes, I cannot really do the paper justice, but the presentation aims to bring out some of the issues or the more pertinent issues that the paper discusses. Then we shall show the film from Sharik group, and Brendan will talk us through the specific experiences and very rich in-country and ground experiences of developing the protection manual, which this paper is based on, and then we'll open up the floor for discussion. So the paper explores the three major issues that the paper explores are the concept of community-based protection, the challenges to community-based protection, and then it offers insights and operational experiences from the manual Safety with Dignity. The fundamental argument of the paper is that a more, what's the word I'm looking for, conventional perhaps, location of protection or an understanding of protection that is focused on state and non-state actors, which protection has historically been focused on, do more harm or can do more harm than good, and may actually fail to deliver effectively on its protection objectives. And this is because such a narrow understanding of protection focusing on state and non-state actors to the exclusion of communities fails to recognize and respond to pre-existing protection problems. And as we all know, a disaster or conflict, whether sudden onset or protracted, will actually not only create new protection issues and risk patterns, but will exacerbate new ones. And focusing only on state and non-state actors completely fails to see that. It also fails to include affected population in the design and implementation of humanitarian intervention. This will lead to decreased safety and dignity because they do take a step backwards. And I've been to Haiti and I've seen this happen. And we've just finished a report actually where I spoke to affected communities in Pakistan after the IDP crisis. And we see this again and again where protection suddenly, communities take a step back, sort it out, guys, none of our business. And we can discuss this in the discussion. It also can lead to diminished community capacity and resilience and dependency. And I see these as very closely interlinked because also a lot of the time, and this is, I guess, more relevant to protracted conflicts and protracted disasters where there is a sense of, well, you sort it out if you can. So what is the difference with community-based protection? What does community-based protection offer? It empowers communities to achieve their rights with safety and dignity. It supports affected communities to identify, analyze, and prioritize protection problems. It brings attention and advocates for protection problems, and it identifies and strengthens local protection strategies. So it has more potential to lead to long-term sustainable protection. And I guess this is one of the things that Brendan will talk to more in detail. So why community-based protection? There is the very practical functional thing that they are the first line of protection and support, actually. They are the communities affected and they are the first line of protection and support. And that actually communities can and do constantly organize and advocate and support and develop local self-protection strategies. And this is something that I'll pick on again in the challenges that we cannot romanticize communities. And of course, communities are not one homogeneous thing, but communities do support and develop their own protection strategies, which can be, again, which is part of the challenges. These protection strategies can, in and of themselves, be quite oppressive, but we'll get to that. So, the paper also explores the role of communities in protection. Communities can and do address threats and vulnerabilities that pre-exist a crisis. They address risks resulting from emergency situations and address the harm arising from actions of state and non-state actors and whether this harm is conscious and sometimes it is not conscious and it is not deliberate, and I guess most of the time it can be non-conscious and non-deliberate. Community-based protection and the global protection architecture. The paper moves to locating community-based protection as I would say a mechanism of protection, perhaps, within the global protection architecture. And it suggests that community-based protection is about actively engaging affected communities as central actors in the protection discourse and practice. And my understanding of the paper, as I said, I'm not a protection specialist, is that there is this move from state and non-state actors as the locus of the protection discourse and practice to affected communities being in the central space of the protection discourse and practice. Community-based protection also is about more than including communities in the mechanisms of the project design. So it's, I don't know if I'm using the word correctly, it's more of an attitudinal change. So it's not a mechanistic, oh, let's include communities and tick the box. Yes, we've asked 5 people, how would you like to be protected, or whatever needs assessment it is in protection. It recognizes the fundamental role of communities in mitigating, addressing, as well as perpetuating protection risks. And one of the things I found very refreshing about the paper and about the manual is the recognition that communities are not the romanticized, problem-free, homogeneous entities. They do mitigate protection risks, they do respond to protection risks, but they also can perpetuate protection risks to specific, especially specific constituencies and populations within the community. The paper then moves to the operational bit, perhaps, of protection and outlines some of the experiences that were derived from the Safety with Dignity. And this is the manual. As Wendy said, there are copies of the manual outside, and if there are not enough copies, we can send whoever needs copies the manual. It's really a good manual. There are 3 ways, obviously, in the protection practice or praxis about protection. There is protection mainstreaming, which is about minimum responsibility to do no harm in a crisis, emergency, or a disaster situation. Protection integration, which is actively incorporating safety, security, and dignity objectives across the sectoral programs and across the sector. And there are standalone protection programming, and these are interventions focused entirely on safety, security, and dignity of affected populations. And I would say that most organizations have protection mainstreaming as a minimum anyway, because we all subscribe to the do no harm code of practice, and there will be overlapping between the protection integration and standalone programming. So in ActionAid's case, for example, we do have some standalone programming projects, especially around access to justice and violence against women, but we also do integrate protection, and we are in the path to integrate protection across the sectoral programs. So the paper looks at the ways of identifying and building on community-based protection strategies. And it suggests 4 ways, mechanisms, entry points, which are identifying positive community strategies. So there are positive community strategies out there, and the way is we go identify these strategies. Identifying strategies that aim to be positive but can have harmful impact. So communities do have strategies that aim to be positive, but actually in their analysis can have positive impact. Communities can also actively engage in negative coping mechanisms, and communities can and do have unrecognized potential resources and capacities, and community-based protection is about bearing this in mind and working with these 4 community coping mechanisms or community protection strategies, as the paper calls them, which I think is a more accurate word of describing it than mechanisms. Community-based programs work best when they recognize, promote, and support local capacities. They direct participation of affected populations. They involve direct participation of affected populations. They are built on consultation and partnership with local community-based organizations and NGOs. And they integrate community-based protection across sectors and contexts. The paper then, I think, sums up the opportunities and challenges to community-based protection. Okay, well, community-based protection seems to be this fantastic thing. What are the opportunities that it is offering us as protection practitioners, and I think all of us working in disaster and emergency to some extent need to be a protection practitioner, if not a protection specialist. So the opportunities is that it recognizes and supports the role of communities in their own protection. It works closely with community-based organizations and NGOs to prioritize protection problems. And from my experience, I think this is an important thing. And although it does sound a bit of rhetoric, that protection does seem to be at the end of the priorities, even with communities, because, well, we've got more important things to think of actually. So with community-based protection, we can prioritize with communities protection issues as a community priority. It also offers to analyze existing strategies and provide trainings. And as we said, communities do have strategies, and it's tapping into these protection strategies. It offers the opportunity to integrate community-based protection into program cycle and across sectors. And it ensures that staff are appropriately trained to do this integration. So when an organization consciously adopts a community-based protection, it will, or the ideal is that it will invest in its staff training and staff skills and staff capacities to be able to interface with communities to develop these protection strategies. The challenges, the limitations of communities, and I think I have very inadequately perhaps and unfairly summarized a very complex set of challenges under limitations of communities. And I think there is a real risk of romanticizing communities and dealing with communities as incapable of doing any wrong. I come from the Middle East, obviously, as my name suggests. So I come from the communities, and I've lived in the third world, Middle East, until the grand age of 30. So, and God, communities are and can and still are oppressive. So the risk of romanticizing of communities can do no harm at all, and have protection strategies. Well, communities have protection strategies within their own biases, within some very culturally oppressive, what I call practices, and within very hierarchical sometimes structures. So there are lots of limitations to communities. And also communities, as we all say, are not homogeneous. And those who speak louder and speak stronger and are more visible within communities are those who have power within these communities. So a lot of the times also our interventions of protection can perpetuate existing hierarchical structures and can actually raise more risks by trying to destabilize these structures, which again I think Brendan will talk about. Community-based protection, this actually links to is very contextual and very varied. So coming up with a set of this is what community-based protection is not doable. We just can't do that, and it's about adapting to the context, which means that we need as organizations adopting community-based protection to be constantly monitoring and learning from our practices and developing very, very flexible frameworks for community-based protection. Again, linking community-based protection across sectors and contexts is extremely challenging because of, and I'm speaking from a humanitarian perspective here, because also of the way the humanitarian assistance model is structured. It does not really lend itself very easily to the integration of protection across sectors and contexts. And I mean, Annie, you're here and you might be able to speak more than that to that, that even in the evaluations of this cluster system, for example, one of the things that come up again and again and again are that issues like protection, which are supposed to be integrated, we're finding difficulties of integrating. So we have the protection structures, but they're not integrated across all structures. And this is also mirrored across not only the overall humanitarian assistance structure, but also in the organizations themselves. So how do we as organizations, not just as a humanitarian assistance sector, integrate this across sectors and contexts? So I